My son told me I was too ugly to be at his wedding. I watched him smile for the cameras, thinking he had won. But I had a secret worth millions, and everything was about to change. I'm so grateful that you're here with me, listening to my story. Please like this video, stay with me until the very end, and let me know which city you're watching from. It means so much to see how far my story has reached, and I can't wait to share every moment with you. Don't forget to subscribe so we can keep this journey together. My son told me I was too ugly for his wedding. He didn't yell. He didn't storm in with accusations. He said it like a fact, calm and deliberate, as if he were stating the time or commenting on the weather. He said the wedding had a vision, a particular aesthetic, and I no longer belonged in it. He said I would ruin the pictures, distract the guests. His fiancée agreed. She didn't raise her voice either. She smiled in that polished, rehearsed way. People smile when they want to be kind but don't feel it. She suggested I stay home more. Better yet, enter long-term care, somewhere quiet, somewhere that would keep me out of sight. My son nodded. He said nothing more. He didn't see the storm brewing behind my eyes, the fire that had kept me going for decades, the grit and sacrifices no one acknowledged. I let them leave. I watched their car disappear down the street. Silence swallowed the room like a tide. I stood in my lavender blouse, the one with tiny pearl buttons I'd always liked. I'd pinned on the pearl earrings he had given me years ago, and for a moment, I allowed myself to remember him as a child, the way he used to climb into my lap, the way he'd brush his hand across my cheek and call me beautiful. That memory felt like a different lifetime. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply turned toward the window and whispered, "Thank you for showing me who you really are." The night that followed was long, quiet, heavy. I sat in the dark, wrapped in a threadbare robe, listening to the hum of the heater and the occasional cough that rattled my chest. I thought about everything I had done for him, nights spent scrubbing hospital floors to pay for his education, days spent denying myself so he could have the life I never had, mornings waking with exhaustion to make sure he had breakfast and clean clothes. I remembered the tiny scraped knees, the whispered secrets, the first day of high school, the heartbreaks I tried to cushion. I remembered every milestone, every heartbreak, every small triumph. And now, in one simple sentence, he erased it all. He reduced me to an inconvenience, a blemish on his perfect day. My hands shook, my breath caught, but the rage was cold, precise, not chaotic. It didn't need to shout. It needed only to be planned. I opened the drawer beneath my bed, pulling out the box I had kept secret for years. Inside were the letters, the deeds, the accounts, the will, carefully hidden, meant to be revealed only at the right moment. I laid them on the table, touching each one as if memorizing their weight, their purpose, their power. My body felt tired, worn thin, but my mind was alive, sharp, calculating. I wrote a letter, addressed to him, outlining the changes he would never anticipate. I carefully detailed my intentions. The properties, the shares, the accounts, the life I had built would no longer pass to him. Instead, everything would go to the Rose House Foundation, the shelter where I had spent decades helping women who had nothing, teaching them self-sufficiency, giving them hope. I wanted him to understand that while he had measured life in appearances, I had measured it in impact. I folded the letter, sealed it in an envelope, and placed it in the manila folder marked with his name. Then I wrote another for his fiancée, not angry, not accusatory, simply truthful, a mirror reflecting their choices, their entitlement, their cruelty. The envelopes sat side by side on the counter, ready. I stood for a long time, staring at the kitchen floor, at the knife marks and the wear of decades, at the faint smell of tea and lavender. I breathed slowly, measuring my heartbeat, feeling the anticipation mix with a strange calm. I had waited for this moment, not revenge, not spectacle, not satisfaction. I had waited to reclaim what they tried to take from me, my dignity, my life, my story. I wouldn't cry, wouldn't shout, wouldn't even speak. I would simply be present in absence, quiet and deliberate. I walked to the bedroom, looked at my reflection in the mirror. The scarf wrapped around my head hid my thinning hair, my tired face. My eyes were alive, and they held a secret they could never steal. I touched the scarf lightly, imagining the day I would leave it behind, folded perfectly, blue with silver threads. One day, my son would see it, and he would realize the woman he thought he knew had already vanished quietly, leaving him nothing but the truth. I whispered to myself, "This is the day you learn who I really am." I folded my hands, feeling the faint tremor in my fingers, and smiled inwardly. The world thought I was weak, dying, invisible. The truth was far more powerful. I was alive, fully, silently, finally, for the first time in years, and no one, not my son, not his fiancée, would ever see me coming again. The morning of the wedding arrived with a kind of quiet that feels heavier than noise. Dawn had not yet touched the rooftops, and the air smelled faintly of damp earth and hope. I moved slowly, deliberately, as if every motion had to be measured, documented, savored. I bathed with water lukewarm against my skin, my hands gliding over every contour, memorizing the lines of my body that time had reshaped. I lingered on my face, tracing the faint wrinkles around my eyes and mouth. Proof of decades lived fiercely, quietly, without apology. I dressed in the soft gray suit I reserved for church services, the one that made me feel upright, proud, capable. I wrapped the deep blue scarf with silver threading around my head, a shield and a statement in one, and pinned my mother's small silver dove brooch to my lapel. It gleamed faintly in the morning light, a talisman of resilience. I looked in the mirror and saw a woman who had endured, survived, and prepared. Not fragile, not broken, but precise and patient. I was ready, but Monique arrived promptly, her navy pantsuit crisp, her low heels clicking softly on the driveway. Her presence was quiet, authoritative, steady, reliable, unwavering. She carried the manila envelope with Tobias's name, in bold letters, as if it were a ticking clock of justice. I handed her a small black purse containing tissues, water, and the second envelope meant for Kendra. "This one's for her," I said. My voice was calm, almost serene, though my hands gripped the cane tightly. "Give it after." She studied me for a moment, concern flickering across her eyes. "Are you sure you're up for this?" I nodded. "I want to see him, just once. I want him to understand the distance he's built between us." The drive to the vineyard was quiet, the hum of the car a gentle undercurrent to my thoughts. Rolling hills stretched past the windows, sun barely rising, painting the sky in soft pinks and blues. I thought of all the mornings I had woken early for him, preparing breakfast, lunches, uniforms, dreams. Now I was awake for me. We arrived at the property and were met with the curated elegance of a wedding I was never meant to attend. Rows of vines stretched into the distance, guests milling in pastel dresses and crisp suits, laughter floating through the air, white tents and string lights, the quartet playing soft jazz, all meticulously planned. Everything perfect except for the one woman they hadn't accounted for. Monique guided me to the designated seating. Guests glanced in our direction. Polite smiles exchanged, but none recognized me. I could have been anyone, a quiet relative, a family friend, a shadow, and that was exactly how I wanted it. I settled in the third row, my hands folded over my lap, my breath slow, almost ritualistic. The officiant began with words about love, trust, and honoring those who raised you. Tobias's posture shifted at the mention of parents, a flicker of tension in his back, but his eyes never sought mine. Kendra's gaze remained forward, radiant and expectant. They didn't know I was watching, analyzing, cataloging each gesture, each inflection, each smile that never reached the eyes. Tobias walked down the aisle, polished, proud, every inch the groom rehearsed in mirrors and expectation. Kendra followed, her gown sparkling, hair perfect, steps measured, smile rehearsed. The crowd sighed, clapped, camera flashes punctuating the air like distant fireworks. I did not sigh. I did not clap. My eyes remained fixed on Tobias, tracing the boy I had raised, the man he had chosen to become. The vows, the rings, the gentle kiss, everything went on as it should, perfectly. Without awareness that a reckoning was seated mere rows away, I sipped water, the faint chill sliding down my throat, grounding me. Monique leaned over, silent question in her eyes. "Not yet," I whispered. The reception began, the guests dispersing toward the tent. I nodded at Monique. Her hand moved to the envelopes, smooth and purposeful. She walked toward the couple, expression neutral, every step measured, deliberate. Tobias's smile faltered when he saw her approach. Confusion clouded Kendra's features. "Congratulations," Monique said evenly, handing Tobias the envelope, then turning to offer Kendra hers. Before either could speak, Monique returned to my side. "Done," she murmured. I rose, gripping the cane, the weight of anticipation pressing through my body. Across the vineyard, Tobias opened the envelope, his face transformed, confusion, disbelief, panic, all flooding simultaneously. The documents, the new will, the evidence of donation, all meticulously prepared, all irrevocable. Kendra's hand trembled as she tore open her envelope, her perfect composure cracking. a glimpse of reality she had never considered. I remained seated, serene, a calm observer of the storm I had quietly orchestrated. The blue scarf, silver threads gleaming faintly in the sunlight, rested over the chair where I had been, a silent signature. I whispered to myself, "This is for every mother who was told she wasn't enough." I left the vineyard without a word. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of crushed grass and distant roses. Monique guided me to the car, careful, protective, yet silent. I didn't look back. The envelopes had done their work. Tobias was left with the evidence of every choice, every neglect, every selfish thought he had wielded as a weapon against me. I didn't need to witness the aftermath. His expression, frozen mid-flash, was imprinted in my mind like a photograph. I let him hold his truth. I let him feel the weight of what he had lost. The drive home was quiet, the landscape passing like pages of a book I had already read. I thought about the years of silent endurance, the moments of whispered prayer in hospital corridors, the nights I went hungry so he could have dessert, all of it condensed into a single, deliberate act, the return of power into my own hands. I had lived in the shadows for so long, allowing the world, my own child, to decide my worth. But now, the script had flipped. I was no longer subject to their judgment. I was the author. Once home, I settled into my favorite armchair by the window. Tea in hand, I let the silence fill the space around me, thick and satisfying. Outside, the streetlights flickered on, casting gentle halos across the garden. I sipped slowly, letting the warmth anchor me. It was not vengeance that fueled MIT, was liberation. Every heartbeat was a small rebellion against the weight I had carried silently for decades. The envelopes were gone, the letters shredded, the will executed. I had made my presence felt not through anger, but through quiet precision, calculated grace. Tobias and Kendra could continue their lives, blind to the quiet power I now wielded. I thought of the scarf, blue with silver threading, folded neatly on the third-row chair. I imagined someone noticing it, someone questioning its presence, someone wondering who had vanished so deliberately. Let them wonder, let the whispers swirl. In absence, there is a presence stronger than any spoken word. The world expected me to weep, to collapse under the weight of betrayal. Instead, I exhaled. I smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carries decades of resilience and refusal to be diminished. The next days were deliberate in their rhythm. I went to the market, selecting herbs and fresh vegetables, lingering over the white lilies that reminded me of hope and renewal. Each movement was mine alone. I catalogued the memories of Tobias's childhood with clarity, scraped knees, whispered confessions, late-night consolations, mornings of breakfast hurried, yet warm. I remembered the sacrifices that went unseen, the love that went unreturned, the quiet persistence of a mother who chose endurance over confrontation. These memories were mine to hold, untouchable. Monique updated me from afar, sharing news of social media posts, of the viral story of the Rose House Foundation, of tributes that called me graceful, resilient, untouchable. I allowed myself a small smile, not for recognition, but for justice, lived quietly. I had not sought fame. I had sought acknowledgement of my own worth, and the world, in its slow and curious way, had noticed. I reflected on Tobias, alone in front of the floral arch, the envelope trembling in his hand. I imagined the questions swirling in his mind, the disbelief, the anger, the shame. I did not pity him. I did not gloat. I had simply allowed the consequences of his choices to manifest. For once, he would be forced to confront himself without excuses, without shadows to blame. He would see the emptiness he had cultivated, the bridges he had burned, and the cost of his arrogance. And all of it, quiet and precise, was a gift he had not recognized. At night, I wrote in my journal, documenting the day's events with clarity and honesty, not anger, not malice, just truth. I allowed myself to feel the satisfaction of completion, the subtle thrill of reclaiming my narrative. I had been sidelined, diminished, deemed invisible. But now, I was seen not through the eyes of the unworthy, but through the clarity of my own choosing. I would not linger in bitterness. I would not let the shadows of disappointment dominate me. I had acted with precision, with intention, and with an integrity that only comes from living quietly, purposefully, and fully. The world had assumed my silence meant weakness. They were wrong. Silence can carry more force than words, more weight than anger. In the quiet, I had rebuilt myself. I had reclaimed my agency. Tobias and Kendra might continue in their curated lives, unaware of the strength that had passed through the vineyard that day. And that was precisely how it should be. I lived with intention, and they lived with consequences. The days after the wedding were quieter than I expected, almost reverent. I moved through my home slowly, savoring the absence of expectation. No one called, no one demanded anything, and for the first time in decades, my own needs came first. I lingered in the kitchen, brewing coffee just to watch the steam rise, tracing the curve of the cup as though it were a small miracle. The world outside still spun, oblivious to the small rebellion I had enacted. But in my home, time belonged to me. Monique checked in, her voice careful, protective. People are still talking about the wedding. They're calling it unprecedented. I smiled faintly. The word unprecedented feeling, right? I let her fill me in. Whispers of my name circulating online, articles speculating about the mysterious woman in the scarf, the sudden renaming of the Rose House Foundation building to Massey Hall. I did not respond with pride. I responded with quiet acknowledgement. This was not about fame. This was about survival, about reclamation. I spent the mornings walking along the coastal cliffs near my new home in southern Spain. The wind tugged at my scarf, at my coat, at my hair, as if demanding attention. I let the sun warm my skin and the salt in the air fill my lungs. Every step was deliberate, a meditation. I thought about Tobias, the shock, the disbelief, the hollow triumph he had been allowed to display before the world. I imagined him trying to reconstruct the narrative, trying to argue, trying to reclaim what he had no right to. I smiled quietly. He had learned nothing about kindness, nothing about gratitude, and everything about consequence. I also thought of Kendra, clutching the envelope I had left in Monique's hands. I imagined her reading my words, the confusion twisting into panic, the illusion of control evaporating. She had married the idea of Tobias, the version of him she wished existed. But the man she married had no claim to me, no claim to my fortune, no claim to my life. I had dismantled the illusion without a word spoken, without a confrontation, with precision only years of patience and observation could provide. Back at home, I tended to the small courtyard. Basil, mint, rosemary all thriving under my careful attention. I trimmed the plants, watered them, inhaled their fragrance. The rituals were grounding, reminding me of life's small, tangible pleasures. I thought about the years of invisible labor, the sacrifices I had made to provide, to nurture, to shield. Those years had not been wasted. They had prepared me for this moment, for the reclamation of agency, for the careful orchestration of justice. I allowed myself a private laugh, remembering Tobias at the altar, envelope trembling, face pale, ego splintering. No words could have done what that silent act achieved. He had finally felt the weight of neglect, of selfishness, of absence, not through lecture, not through punishment, but through the inevitability of truth. And truth, I realized, was far more potent than any argument. The evenings were my favorite. I brewed tea, wrapped a blanket across my knees, and watched the sun lower itself behind the cliffs. The colors of the sky shifted: lavender, gold, deep indigo. The rhythm of the waves below became a heartbeat, steady, reassuring, affirming. I no longer feared loneliness. I embraced it as clarity. In the quiet, I was alive. I was present. I was free. Monique delivered updates sparingly, always cautious, always protective. Some are calling you a ghost, she said once. I nodded. Let them. A ghost moves unseen, yet everything bends in response to it. I had become that ghost in their lives, not to haunt, but to remind, to witness, to assert existence without permission. I had given them one last glimpse of my agency, one last chance to respect me, even in absence. I reflected often on my son, Tobias. He had wanted control, validation, approval. He had wanted to see me diminished. He had wanted me absent. I had given him exactly what he asked for: my absence, but not my weakness. And in that absence, I had been more present than he could ever imagine. He would have stories to tell about the wedding, about the envelopes, about the woman who disappeared, but he would not know peace. He would not know the satisfaction of a life lived on one's own terms. I had peace. The town was quiet at night. The streets smelled of salt and cool stone. I would sit by the window, watching lanterns flicker across the courtyards, listening to the faint cries of gulls overhead. Life was precise in its rhythm, deliberate, clean. I had shed the unnecessary, the guilt, the expectation, the invisible chains of obligation. I had shed the past without rancor, without spectacle, with intention and calm. In these moments, I understood fully. Survival is not a matter of endurance alone, but of reclaiming your narrative, of allowing the quiet victories to unfold without audience, without applause. And in that reclamation, I had found freedom, dignity, and the rare, profound satisfaction of living with purpose. The morning I decided to leave Charleston for good, the city felt muted, as if it were aware I was severing the last tie that bound me. I packed lightly a leather handbag, a few changes of clothes, the letters I intended to destroy later, and the envelope Monique would deliver as my final instruction to the world I was leaving behind. Each object had its purpose. Each carried intention, nothing frivolous, nothing impulsive. I had learned that lessons, and freedom, arrived when one moved with deliberate care. Monique arrived before sunrise. She parked quietly on the curb, engine humming low, as though aware that any loud noise would break the spell of the moment. I slid into the passenger seat, my scarf wrapped snugly, my brooch catching the dim light through the windshield. "Everything's set," I said softly, my voice careful, measured. She nodded, no questions asked. She understood that this journey was mine alone. The drive to the airport was quiet, punctuated only by the occasional sigh of the tires on asphalt. I traced the outline of the brooch on my coat and thought about Tobias. I thought about the hollow expression on his face when he realized that every cent, every property, every asset I had amassed had been redirected to the Rose House Foundation. I let a small smile curve my lips. He had learned, in the most public and undeniable way, that entitlement is never a birthright. I had not punished him. I had merely removed the scaffolding of expectation that he thought he had earned. At the airport, I moved slowly through the terminal. People brushed past, unaware of me. Some glanced at the woman in the blue scarf, eyes briefly curious, but no one recognized the significance of her existence. This invisibility, this quiet anonymity, was delicious. For the first time in decades, I could move without audience, without judgment, without history looming over me. I bought a ticket to southern Spain, selected a seat by the window, and watched the city fade beneath the clouds. Flight attendants moved past, polite smiles, routine greetings. I sipped tea, wrapped in my wool blanket, staring at the horizon as the sun rose over the Atlantic. I allowed my mind to drift back to Charleston, the wedding, the envelopes, the tremor of Tobias's hands, the sudden panic in Kendra's eyes, each memory, a careful stitch in the tapestry I had created. I had orchestrated absence, silence, truth, and in that quiet precision, I had won. When we landed in Spain, the air smelled of oranges, of salt, of possibility. The taxi ride to the coastal village was picturesque, with whitewashed walls, blue shutters, and courtyards overflowing with flowers. I inhaled slowly, allowing the air to fill my lungs. Monique unloaded my bag at the small villa I had rented, a modest home with a courtyard just large enough for mint, basil, and rosemary. The windows opened to the sea, and the sound of waves replaced the clamor of Charleston, replaced the echoes of expectations. I set down my bag, moved through the home with reverence. Each corner, each surface, I touched deliberately. I opened the windows, letting the morning light spill across the floor. I brewed a pot of tea, wrapped my blanket across my knees, and inhaled deeply. Silence, I realized, was not emptiness. Silence was reclamation. Silence was presence. I had left behind all that did not serve me: guilt, obligation, familial chains, disappointment, and retained only what I chose: my life, my freedom, my peace. I thought about Tobias one last time. He would rebuild, eventually. Perhaps he would find solace in wealth he had never truly earned. Perhaps he would attempt to regain influence over what he thought was his legacy. But the lesson would linger. Respect cannot be purchased, gratitude cannot be faked, and entitlement is always temporary when it is built on the absence of empathy. I allowed a quiet laugh. He had everything he deserved: confusion, embarrassment, the bitter taste of public exposure. I had given him exactly what he asked for: one last smile at the wedding, one last stage to be cruel, one last opportunity to witness his own folly. Evening came. I tended to the courtyard, planted a few more herbs, watered the flowers, and let the salty wind play with my scarf. I could hear laughter from the street below, the faint chatter of neighbors, the quiet rhythm of life continuing. And in that ordinary, persistent rhythm, I found extraordinary peace. I no longer needed validation. I no longer needed acknowledgement. I no longer needed my name carried by gossip. by headlines, or by memory. My life, my story, my freedom, they were mine, and mine alone. That night, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the moon's reflection ripple across the water. The scarf I had left at the wedding, folded neatly on the third-row chair, was a relic now, a symbol of precision, of dignity, of quiet victory. Someone might find it. Someone might wonder. Let the world tell its stories while I lived my own. I was alive. I was present. I was free. And for the first time in decades, I truly belonged to myself. The mornings in my new coastal village have a rhythm all their own. Sunlight spills through the blue shutters, glinting on the whitewashed walls of my courtyard. I wake before dawn, the scent of salt and orange blossoms filling the air, and I breathe in a life that I carved for myself. The weight of Charleston, of Tobias, of obligations that were never mine to bear, has dissolved like mist in the rising sun. Here I am, just Ellie. Nothing more, nothing less. I sip my tea slowly, savoring the warmth, letting the quiet settle deep into my bones. I tend the courtyard methodically. The basil, the mint, the rosemary, they grow alongside me, or perhaps I grow alongside them. I water, prune, and watch the small miracles of life unfold, leaf by leaf. There is power in this simplicity, a sense of mastery in nurturing something real and tangible, something that does not demand performance or apology. I have no audience here. I need no applause. Every breath, every small act, is acknowledgement enough. Letters arrive from unexpected places, women who read the viral story of the Rose House Foundation, who were moved by the tale of the mother who gave everything and demanded nothing in return. They write of gratitude, of hope, of their own struggles and victories. Their words sit in my mailbox, quiet affirmations that the choice I made was not only mine but also part of something larger, something enduring. I read each one slowly, savoring the prose, the raw emotion, the humanity, and when I fold them back into their envelopes, I feel a connection to the world that is neither intrusive nor demanding. It is gentle, sustaining, alive. I think of Tobias often, though without bitterness. I imagine him navigating the ruins of expectation, grappling with the reality that his name alone carries no currency in the lives of those he sought to control. He is learning the hardest lesson, that life is neither owed nor guaranteed, that respect cannot be borrowed or coerced, that love without acknowledgement is hollow. I allow him that pain. It is neither cruel nor vindictive. It is consequence. I gave him a moment to see himself clearly, and now I let that moment breathe without interference. Evenings are spent on the terrace, tea in hand, listening to the lull of the sea. Occasionally, I encounter neighbors curious, gentle, unaware of the shadowed chapters of my past. I smile, I nod, I let conversations drift like the wind. I tell them I was once a teacher, a mother, someone who loved fiercely. I tell fragments, enough to connect, enough to share humanity, but not enough to unravel the quiet peace I have fought so hard to earn. They call me Ellie, and it is enough, sometimes. I close my eyes and see the scarf I left behind on the third-row chair in Charleston, blue with silver threading, folded meticulously. I imagine someone finding it, pausing, wondering who placed it there and why. Let them imagine the woman who vanished, who existed in absence as much as presence, who commanded respect without confrontation, who lived fiercely without apology. That scarf is my signature, a silent testament to everything I endured and everything I reclaimed. On my walks along the cobblestone streets, I meet the ocean at the cliff's edge. I let my fingers trail in the salt water, let the wind tug at my scarf, let the horizon remind me of possibility. I am alive, not just surviving, but thriving. My body, once frail and marked by illness, feels the strength of choice, of autonomy, of time reclaimed. Each heartbeat is a victory, each step a declaration that I exist beyond expectation, beyond judgment, beyond history. Night falls, and I return home. The villa glows softly under the moonlight, the courtyard fragrant with herbs and flowers. I light a single candle, set a cup of tea by my side, and watch as the firelight dances across the walls. I whisper to myself, I am here. I am enough. I am free. And for the first time, it is not an affirmation against absence or cruelty, but a simple truth, unassailable, undeniable, luminous. I think of my life before this, the battles fought, the love given, the indifference returned. I smile softly. I lived through it. I survived it. And now, finally, I thrive. Tobias, Kendra, the weddings, The whispers, they belong to their world. Mine is a quiet one, unclaimed and unmeasured, rich not with possessions or praise, but with time, with clarity, with peace. Here, in this coastal village, I have everything. I take one last sip of tea, let the warmth settle in my chest, and close my eyes. Tomorrow, the sun will rise again over blue shutters, over mint and basil, over a life I chose without compromise, and I will rise with it, full of purpose, full of presence, full of peace. The world can speculate. Remember, forget I am alive. I am free, and I will continue, quietly, deliberately, beautifully, as myself.